The cuttings deep below the Great Pyramid were designed and built to pump water. This massive, industrially scaled water pump was first used in the construction of the Great Pyramid, which sits atop the subterranean water pump. The water that was moved up through this unique and efficient water pump was used to keep the water locks full during construction of the Great Pyramid so that the stones on barges could be effortlessly moved to their final location. Our first video series describes the Great Pyramid's construction process using water, water locks, and barges. This video series describes how that water was lifted to the necessary height, allowing the construction of the Great Pyramid from the paving stones all the way up to the capstone. In that this subterranean water pump was used during the construction of the Great Pyramid, this pump is also called the construction pump. This water pump operated in 3 distinct phases. In the first phase, water moved down the descending passage and entered the subterranean chamber. The water compressed the air in the upper portion of the subterranean chamber to a very high pressure. The subterranean chamber is about 100 feet below the surface of the bedrock. The descending passage holds about 88 tons of water. But the builders did not simply use gravity to move water down the descending passage to compress the air in the subterranean chamber. No, the builders were much more sophisticated than that. The builders incorporated water's property of implosion to make this water pump extremely efficient. They utilized water moving in a whirlpool deep below the Great Pyramid. This whirling vortex of water acted like a powerful hurricane enclosed in the subterranean chamber. Combining the property of implosion and the force of gravity, the ancient builders created a high-tech, industrially scaled, efficient, and powerful water pumping device. At the beginning of Phase 1, the subterranean chamber is filled with water in its lower half. The upper portion of the subterranean chamber is comprised of air. There is a cutaway view of the pit in the floor of this subterranean chamber. The pit was originally only about 12 feet deep. This is a gauge to indicate the relative pressure of the air in the upper portion of the subterranean chamber. The L is for relatively low pressure, and the H is for high pressure. The purpose of Phase 1 is to compress the air in the subterranean chamber to an extremely high pressure. When Phase 1 begins, water moves past the check valve in the descending passage, down the descending passage, past the lesser subterranean chamber, and into the subterranean chamber. Gravity and implosion are both used in the operation of this water pump. These two forces are combined and complement each other during the water pump's operation. The force of gravity is added to the effect of implosion to make this water pump much more powerful and efficient than the hydraulic ram water pumps conceived by modern mankind. In Phase 1, water travels down past the check valve in the upper end of the descending passage. This water travels into the subterranean chamber. When water moves down the descending passage, the check valve opens. When water stops moving down, the check valve closes. This valve does not allow water to move back up the descending passage. When water reaches the lesser subterranean chamber, turbulence is introduced. This small cutting causes water to move in a whirlpool in this chamber and also causes water to travel in a vortex as it enters the subterranean chamber. There was no change of plans. This is the purpose of this cutting. The lesser subterranean chamber indicates the use of water's property of implosion as described by Victor Schauberger. The ancient geniuses designed and built a very sophisticated water pump. The lesser subterranean chamber causes water to move in a whirlpool, utilizing water's property of implosion. Water is moving in a vortex as it enters the subterranean chamber. As indicated in the animation, at the very beginning of Phase 1, water is in the descending passage as well as in the horizontal passage leading to the subterranean chamber. When water begins to move past the lesser subterranean chamber, a whirlpool in this chamber is created. Water movement also causes the formation of a vortex starting at the lesser subterranean chamber, which then leads into the subterranean chamber. Water enters the subterranean chamber both by gravity and water's property of implosion. These two forces, acting together and complementing each other, cause the air in the upper portion of the subterranean chamber to be compressed to a very high pressure. The vortex initiated by the lesser subterranean chamber travels all the way to the end of the dead-end passage. The design of the subterranean chamber causes water to enter the subterranean chamber at the very eastern end of this chamber. This causes water entering this chamber to move in a clockwise direction. The misshapen mounds in the western end of the subterranean chamber act as a water break. All of these features designed into the subterranean chamber by the ancient geniuses cause a powerful whirlpool to form in the area of the pit in the floor of the subterranean chamber. The purpose of this whirlpool in the area of the pit was to move much more water into the subterranean chamber than using just gravity alone. This causes the air in the subterranean chamber to be compressed to a higher pressure than would have been possible just using gravity alone. At the beginning of phase 1, there is no water movement in the subterranean chamber. The design of the subterranean chamber and the movement of water entering the chamber causes a powerful whirlpool to form in the area of the pit. Gravity combined with implosion causes water to compress air in the subterranean chamber. Every design feature of the subterranean cuttings are for the purpose of pumping water. Water enters the subterranean chamber at the extreme eastern end, which causes the water to move in this chamber in a clockwise direction. The irregular humps on the western end act as a water break to slow the movement of water in this end of the chamber. These features cause a powerful whirlpool to form in the area of the pit. We will watch this water movement again, focusing on how the air pressure in this chamber rises as water is compelled to enter this chamber by gravity as well as water's property of implosion. The greater the amount of water entering the subterranean chamber, the higher the air pressure is in this chamber. Using both gravity as well as implosion, more water enters this chamber than using just gravity alone. Here is another view of phase 1, showing the lesser subterranean chamber and the subterranean chamber as they function to compress air in the subterranean chamber. Both gravity and implosion are used to move water into the subterranean chamber. When all of the water that these two forces can move into the subterranean chamber has occurred, then the water movement for this phase of the operation of the construction pump is completed. When this happens, water movement stops and the check valve in the upper end of the descending passage closes and the whirlpool in the subterranean chamber stops. At the end of phase 1, the subterranean chamber is almost full of water and there is no water movement. The air in this chamber is compressed to a high pressure. At the end of phase 1, water movement stops. The subterranean chamber is almost full and the air in this chamber is compressed to a very high pressure. The original builders were geniuses. They designed and built a sophisticated, highly advanced water pumping system deep in the bedrock at the Giza Plateau. This subterranean water pump operates in 3 phases. Phase 1 is completed. Not just gravity, but the powerful force of implosion that Victor Schauberger studied was utilized in this fascinating water pump. At the end of phase 1, the subterranean chamber is almost completely filled with water, and the air in this chamber is highly compressed, yet no water has been pumped so far. In the following video, we will discuss both phase 2 and phase 3 to see how these enigmatic cuttings, which were excavated before the Great Pyramid was built, were used for the purpose of pumping water.